So this is the all-new Samsung S95C. It's the updated version of the S95B, and it's completely different. So let's take a closer look. Don't forget to hit the red button to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up and click the notification bell to get my next video first. So I'm making this video in July 2023 and I was able to get mine for $1599 here in the UK, which was a massive 33% off. I think I would have been really frustrated had I paid £2,400 and already it's that big a discount, but there are some great deals out there to be had. Now this is the second generation of the S95 version. Now last year the picture quality got critical reviews, but the build quality was a little bit disappointing, so I'm hoping that has been addressed this year. Now the first thing that I noticed when I'm taking it out of the box is there's a lot of things in the box. This year it is a completely new design, so I think Samsung must have listened because it was that which was the real big problem. As you can see, you get a whole plethora of materials, which is the construction of the stand. Now what's good news, if you're not going to be using the stand, then you don't really need to worry about a lot of this. There's the One Connect box that comes with this, which will sit on the back, and there's the simple remote control, which again is a nice remote control. It's not the best out there, but it's great. It's also got a solar panel on the back, and it's got USB-C charging. In fact, there's no battery that you can replace inside at all. You do get that second remote control, but the less said about that, the better. Now the stand this year feels really strong and really sturdy, and it comes in a number of parts. It's got to obviously support this, which is the One Connect box. And this thing looks good, it's got some good weight to it, and it's got everything that you're going to need with all of your connections on the side. This year they're all on the side, there are no connections anywhere else. So this year's model may actually be more preferable to wall mount because of its design rather than sit on the stand. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to pop it on the stand and put the stand together so you can see exactly how that's done. And as you can see, with everything unwrapped, there's quite a lot of things to put together. But the good news is that Samsung have got a how-to sheet which shows you everything that you're going to need and the order that you're going to need to do it in. It's pretty straightforward. So the first thing that you need to do is create a flat surface which is protected and pop your TV down onto it. Try not to hit your dog if you do have one. Now I always leave mine wrapped until the very last minute just to protect the screen as best as I can. Now normally it does take 2 or 3 versions of a TV to see a big design change, but this is completely different and completely new. All of the back is different, it's now one solid panel which is the same width all the way up and down. The first thing that you need to do is screw the back plate onto the TV and then sit the base of the stand into the leaning back part, which is what is going to support the One Connect box. Then you just need to close the metal flap which secures that in place. Now it's time to attach that to the back of the TV, and this is a little bit fiddly. You've got to make sure it lines up perfectly. But once it's in place, there's 4 M4 12mm screws which you just screw in, and now you're ready to go. Now normally I put the TV backwards so that you can see all of the connections on the back, but now there's a very good reason for that. We need to put the One Connect box on. There's 2 further small screws which screw into the back plate. These don't go in all the way, these are designed for the One Connect box to hook onto and then be supported. This is great because it means that you can take it off quite easily, you don't need to then worry too much about it. You've got a One Connect cable, there's a short one if you're going to be having the One Connect box on the back of the stand, and then there's a longer one if you're going to be having that located somewhere else, which again is a nice touch. All of your connections are on the back, and here you have 4 HDMI 2.1 4K at 120Hz, and so everything is very similar to last year here. So now that that's connected, you're ready just to connect your HDMI cables, plug it in, and then you're ready to go. But first of all, the design. I really like the look of this. I think it looks great. I think it's vastly improved on last year's, and it feels like the build quality has taken a jump forward. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. There's a lot of plastic on this TV, which I guess is how they bring the price down as low as possible. But this year, the panel is perfectly straight. I don't know whether you remember last year, my panel was wonky, And I know a lot of people had issues with the build quality. Well, this year, mine is absolutely perfect. What I would say though, it just doesn't feel quite as premium as last year's model. There's so much metal on last year's model, whereas this year it's much more plasticky. But anyway, that's an aside. The key thing now is about picture quality. Now, the setup process is exactly the same as what Samsung's setup process has been for the last few years. This time, I used the SmartThings app on my mobile phone to set it up, and that worked really well, and I was quite impressed with the brightness as it first came out of the box. There are still some basic things which annoy me, and I think it should be solved by now. The basic remote control, which is probably the one that you're going to be using all the time because it's the nicer one to use, still doesn't have a source button on, and they've not made any improvements with the software. It still takes several different presses of the button to get to your connected devices, which I think is just an error and it should be solved. We need to have a button on the controller which takes us straight to that point. Yes, it's only 2 or 3 presses, but it's frustrating. Okay, so picture quality out of the box looks really smart. I will go through and do a separate picture settings video from start to finish, so I'm not going to cover that too much in this video. I'll run a few tests, but I'll also do comparisons with this, with the G3, and I've got hold of the C3, and we'll compare it also to last year's S95B. So if those things interest you, make sure you hit the red button to subscribe. In terms of motion handling out of the box, everything seemed fine. I didn't notice any difference at all from last year, and I ran my test which has the shapes changing and running across the screen. Didn't notice any lag or any issues at all, and I wouldn't expect to. This TV last year was one of the best out there for motion handling, so I'm hoping this one is going to be the same too. Now, I also ran my dirty screen effect test, which again shouldn't really be an issue on an OLED TV. They're normally the best for that, but nowadays you never know, so it's always one of the first tests that I run. I'll leave a link to that test in the description if you want to run it on your TV and see how well your TV does. So the colors test came out brilliantly. It was clean, crystal clear. There were no dark edges, no dark corners. Everything looked exactly as it should. Now, we will use the TV for a few weeks before we give some actual figures on HDR brightness, but my out-of-the-box HDR brightness was a peak in a 10% window of 1342, and that went down to 262 in a 100% window peak brightness. Now, SDR brightness was 634, which is good, and 275 on a 100% window. Now, some of those figures do seem a little bit strange. The SDR on a 100% window, for instance, seems quite low, certainly comparing it to my G3. So I will run some calibration and some tests, and hopefully we can iron out any issue that might be there. The other thing that I did notice is that there was a little bit of ABL, which was noticeable in some bright scenes, but that's something which, again, maybe will just sort itself out with further updates, but I'll keep you posted on that. But I do have to say, out of the box, the picture quality does look great. I'm not noticing just with the naked eye any natural massive improvement from last year's, but I'm also not noticing anything deteriorating. So it looks as good, if not maybe just slightly better. Now, I had this set to warm 2 initially, and then I changed it down to warm 1, and the colors then seem to be better. So overall, guys, the design of this TV is completely different to last year. I definitely like it. I like the darker black. I think that looks really good. However, there is quite a lot of plastic. One thing which is as good as last year's is the viewing angles. That is definitely something which looks brilliant, and even when you go to the extremes, you get a great picture. Obviously not this extreme, but you don't notice any dimming or any particular bright areas. It all seems very even. The thickness of the TV is actually slightly thicker than last year's, but it is thinner overall because it hasn't got that big lumpy bottom which last year's one had, and I think I prefer that. Certainly if you're going to be wall mounting this TV, then that is definitely an advantage because the One Connect cable slots right into the back. So overall, this is a great TV. What about reflection handling? Well, I don't know whether you've noticed, but a blind has just gone up in the background, and the reflection handling on this thing is superb. So my friends, that's about it for this video. I'm going to be doing a lot more tests with this TV. I'm going to be comparing it against those other TVs that we've talked about, and we'll also be looking at different gaming settings and also picture setup settings. So if there's anything else that you want to know, leave a comment and let me know in this video, and I'll be sure to include that in the next. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it's been helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you on the next.